Remember, it begins with a T, not an R. Not a roast.
Really? It's kind of late to tell me that. It's my dad's worst nightmare. Me with the microphone talking about him.
Go for it.
Before I get into that, though, I just want to know, just sort of as a baseline, how many people here actually know Mom and Dad and aren't just, you actually know Mom and Dad? See, some people are just graduates. I'm going to have to get you limbered up because I want an honest answer to this question. For those of you who know Dad, raise your hand if, during one of your recent conversations with him, he mentioned the words retaining wall. We got a couple, okay. That's actually not as many as I thought, which means that he's hiding his obsession well. Because the man is obsessed with retaining walls. This goes all the way back to when I was, see, Jody knows, when I was a kid. Look at that. He'd be working hard, and he'd come home, and he would, relax by going out to the garden, which is really just an excuse to build a retaining wall. And that one back when I was just in grade school, it wasn't just a garden, it was a terraced garden, which is French for many retaining walls. So, I'm not a psychologist, and Dad would tell me that I'm completely full of hooey, which wouldn't be the first time, or the second, or the third, but I have a theory about the retaining walls. See, Dad grew up on a farm, and it wasn't, well, at some point he realized that he didn't want to stay on the farm, so he wanted to trade, he's nodding his head, he wanted to trade his coveralls and a tractor for a suit and a briefcase and an Oldsmobile. And so he packed up and moved off to the big city of Cedar Rapids or someplace. Was it Cedar Rapids? I always get them confused with Ames. I know, shocking that I would get those confused, but he packed up, moved off to Cedar Rapids, got his education, and then went to work. And he worked hard, and he worked long, and he worked with diligence and honesty and integrity, and he became a wild success. But he could never really get the dirt out from under his fingernails. And so whenever he would come home, it was like a magnet. He would just, he wouldn't even hit the house. He'd just out to the garden. For those of you who watch Lost, it was kind of like John Locke and the Hatch. He was just always going out there. So I have a theory about why this was, and I think it was because it allowed him to see in a tangible way what he was doing with his, his regular life, not with his non-garden life. And that was to see the results of what he was doing. And see, what Dad does is he sees something that is, and he dreams up a vision of how it could be improved, and he would go out and do it. And then he wouldn't stop there, but he would build a retaining wall to preserve the progress that he made. And he did that with his life too. And so now you know the rest of the story about retaining walls. He wouldn't just draw a line in the sand and say, that's where we were, this is where we're going. He wouldn't just put up a fence, which is just a bolder way to draw a line. He would build an interlocking, permanent brick wall that was designed to withstand the test of time. And he was doing that with his life. So the next time you talk to him, and he mentions retaining walls, which he will, you can play with him a little and tell him, lay down on the sofa and tell me about your mother. So speaking of mothers, mom's more difficult. Because it's almost impossible to pigeonhole mom, to stereotype her. If you tried to hire somebody to do a caricature of her, they would take a picture and hand it back to you and say, that's all I got. Because there is nothing that is to anything about mom. And I sort of realized after a while, after trying to come up with some sort of metaphor for life, like Dad's retaining wall for Mom, that just because she likes it that way, it's intentional. Everything that she does is intentional. And she does her best work in the shadows, out of the spotlight, off stage, and in a way that she doesn't even want recognition or even anybody to know what she was doing. She's secretive, she's effective, she's stealthy. She's a ninja, is what she is. Sneaky, that's right. I know, you've been there. You've been a victim like me. See, some parents try to raise their kids by getting behind them and pushing them. Say, you know, you go that way, boom, and they push them. Other people use a little more finesse by getting in front of their kids and draping a rope over their shoulder and pulling them, saying, we're going this way, hold on, follow me. Mom is a ninja, and she uses martial arts. And they posture, they get ready, and they observe, and they wait, and they watch the target. And I'm the target, in case you're not following. And when the target finally moves, she directs the momentum to where she thinks it should go. And because she's benevolent ninja, the target always ended up in a better place than he even intended it to go. And because she's stealthy, I would turn around when it was all done, and I would say, hey, Mom, look what I did. And she'd stand there and she'd go, nice, good job. So she's a ninja. She's also the first stone in Dad's first retaining wall, and the best decision he ever made was to convince her somehow to become his partner in life, although it was probably her idea and he just doesn't know it. So, anyway, they have together built a life that has improved the family name, and on behalf of the kids and the grandkids, we're just eternally grateful. So to retaining walls and ninjas.